call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 121 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people.
In keeping with the House of Commons order of is it November? Yes, of November 22nd, 2023, we are resuming consideration of Bill C-316, an act to amend the Canadian Heritage Act Court Challenges Program.
Just a real brief administrative matter. On May 7th, 2024, when Ms. Catherine Tate appeared, I asked if she received a bonus. She responded, "I'd like to get legal counsel to make sure it's in compliance with the Privacy Act before I do so, and if it is, I will provide it to the committee." Through the chair to the clerk, have we received correspondence from Ms. Tate telling us what her bonus amount was for the 2021-2022 year?
I don't think we have. I think we heard back from Ms. Tate that she is going to be doing so soon.
Okay.
They're collecting all the information that they need.
Okay, perhaps I'll come back
on whatever they have to do.
week
Remember, they're not meeting till June the 12th. Or board of directors is not meeting.
No, but this is from the previous year, so this is information she already had. So it's the 2021, 2022.
Yes.
This is a bonus she's already received, and she was going to.
So, well, the clerk can answer that one because I can't.
Okay.
But I can tell you that we want to get on with orders of the day, which I was trying to read into the record.
Yeah.
But that's the
Just a quick administrative thing, just yes or no, and then we'll go ahead.
Do you have anything to say, clerk, about that?
I did follow up with them yesterday about that, and they are preparing. They said they're looking into it and they're preparing everything to send us to us.
Okay, I'll perhaps return because I don't want to waste any time. Maybe next week, if we don't receive anything, to perhaps send a letter to Ms. Tate.
I think they have acted by the clerk in writing.
Madam Chair, I'll be very quick if you don't mind. I had asked the CBC for the 6 p.m. newscast ratings coast to coast,
Yes.
and I was wondering if that
has not yet been with. That's going
Thank
to come
you.
with all the other
Thank
things
you.
they're saying.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, now, so we're now pursuant to Wednesday, November the 22nd, 2023. The committee is returning to its consideration of Bill C-316, an act to amend the Canadian Heritage Act Court Challenges Program. Before we begin, I'm going to do the usual housekeeping. Could you all consult the cards on the table?
No cards.
I don't have one, but the cards on the table that tell you how to prevent audio feedback and to show you, to remind you of the little decal on the top to place your, so we can have a good meeting with nobody getting hurt. Now, again, keep your earpiece away from all microphones. And while I'm still trying to figure out how I can speak and have me automatically turned off like I used to with the old phones, I have to remember to keep pressing to take myself off speaking. But there you are. That's a little glitch we're trying to fix. Now, today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, and I want to make a few comments to benefits of members and witnesses. Please wait until I recognize you by name. For those of you who are virtually, please raise your hands in the virtual box so I can recognize you. And again, all comments should be addressed to the chair. And so now we have here with us again, Blair McMurran, Director General, Strategic Policy and International Affairs, and Flavia Major, Director, International Affairs and Human Rights, Strategic Policy and International Affairs of the Department of Canadian Heritage. And of course, we have our legislative clerk, Mr. Mella, that we all know very well, patient man indeed. Resuming debate on the clause by clause, we are now looking at the sub-amendment of Ms. Rachel Thomas to a sub-amendment to the amendment that we still have to vote on G1. So I'm going to read you the sub-amendment just to make sure that everybody has it. And of course, I have to first and foremost find it in my notes. Yes, and it reads, if you have your amendments in front of you, it's in blue, and it says, and Ms. Thomas is inserting after the word independent of the Government of Canada in this clause, she's substituting for which the selection criteria shall be made public and the final selection decision shall be tabled in each House of Parliament. And she's also, that then goes on with Mr. Saray's amendment, sub-amendment, yes, which Mr. Mellor wants to make a comment on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When translating the amendment from Ms. Thomas, we realized that there was a mistake in the sub-amendment from Mr. Serré. In the French version, it should read the Charte canadienne des droits et libertés, et non pas.
The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So in French, originally it said de la personne, and we needed to switch it for et liberté in French.
Is that okay with everyone? Good. Everyone's nodding. That's kind of cool. We're getting along nicely today. Well, just now, let's deal with, we have Ms. Thomas's sub-amendment on the table. Ms. Thomas, would you like to speak to your sub-amendment before we just go open it up for debate?
Thank you, Chair. I would. So now that we've got this sub-amendment, I think cleared up and figured out, essentially what we're doing here is it's creating independence for the, or assuring that there's independence for the body that is issuing the court challenges program or overseeing the intake process. And then it is also creating accountability around what that process looks like. And then also accountability, because the documents have to be, the decisions have to be tabled with the House of Commons. So again, this is based on witness testimony that we heard, that there should be greater independence, greater transparency, and greater accountability, so that whatever government is in power at that time of the program being administered, that it does in fact happen at an arm's length, and that it is done in a nonpartisan fashion to the greatest extent possible.
Now I'll open this sub-amendment up for debate if anyone wants to speak. Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The sub-amendment is interesting. I'm happy to see that we're working in a constructive manner here, and I'm happy that we were able to find a way to integrate some of the content from CPC 2 into G1. And so we have the spirit of CPC 2 in here, and it was something that was asked for by many witnesses. I find it very reasonable, and I would like to ask colleagues to support this sub-amendment.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Then shall we... Anyone who opposed to the sub-amendment? Seeing no opposition? Yes, Mr. Saray? You opposed to the sub-amendment? All right, so then we should call a vote. Do you want to go vote, recorded vote? No? Just so we don't have to have... well, the majority are obviously supporting it. Are you supporting it, Mr. Noor Mohammed?
Madame la Présidente, un vote, s'il vous plaît.
Madam Chair, can we have a vote, please?
Let's call the vote, Chair. Thanks. Those in favor? Go ahead.
The vote is on the sub-amendment of Ms. Thomas. Mr. Noor Mohammed?
No.
Mr. Coteau?
No.
Ms. Gainey?
No.
Madame Latanzio?
No.
Monsieur Serré?
No.
Mr. Waugh?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Monsieur Gourde?
Oui.
Mr. Lawrence?
Oui.
Monsieur Champoux?
Oui.
Ms. Ashton?
No.
Yeas pour 5-5, nays contre 6-6.
The motion, the sub-amendment does not carry. So now I'm going to go to the actual motion of Mr. Noor Mohammed as amended. Any discussion on this?
Ms.
Sorry,
Thomas has her
hand
hands
up. Ms. Thomas, I'm sorry. Ms. Thomas?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Sure, I have another sub-amendment that I would like to move then. So it's based on CPC 3. And so I would offer the following sub-amendment. After the line independent of the Government of Canada, I would insert to be overseen by a panel whose members are selected independently based on criteria that are made public and for which the final membership selection decision shall be tabled in each House of Parliament. If it's helpful, Madam Chair, I'm happy to type that up and provide it to the clerk.
Another phrase to it or clause? I don't know, Ms. Thomas, to the one we already have written here?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I only caught half of what you said.
I said, I'm sorry, did you just add an extra phrase or clause to the one that we already have here? I sense that's what you did, but I'm not sure.
I'll repeat my sub-amendment. So within G1 as amended, I would insert after independent of the Government of Canada, I would insert the following. To be overseen by a panel whose members are selected independently based on criteria that are made public and for which the final membership selection decision shall be tabled in each House of Parliament.
Yes, yeah. So she's added just the first part of it, okay? So I just wanted to suggest that for those of you who want to know exactly what went on, I'm having to borrow Mr. Mellor's notes because my notes disappeared somewhere. Not these ones, this one, yeah. That in fact, for those of you who have not heard, CPC 3, if you have CPC 3 in front of you, what Ms. Thomas is moving is, after administered program, she's not moving that, but it goes to be overseen by a panel whose members are selected independently based on criteria that are made public and for which the final membership selection shall be tabled in each House of Parliament. So have you all got that? That one's here? Okay, is that admissible? Good. So this is admissible discussion. Anyone? Philip?
I want to move through this expeditiously, so I'll just make my comments very brief. I think it's a great idea to have a panel oversighting independent. We've all seen governments of all stripes that have shown partisanship in the past, and we would hate for this program to be tainted by partisanship, whether that be an NDP, Green Party, Liberal, or Conservative government.
Yes, sorry, Ms. Thomas. It's okay, Don, thanks.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just to provide context for this sub-amendment, again, we heard from a number of witnesses just that greater independence is needed so that this program is carried out in a similar manner despite or regardless of which government is in power or which party is in power. In addition to that there would be just greater transparency and greater accountability. These all seem like fairly common sense principles that we would want: independence, transparency, and accountability. And so, again, it's just calling for those things around the way that this program is overseen or administered in order to make sure that it's not partisan and that the government isn't interfering in terms of the types of cases that are selected for funding.
Discussion? Further discussion than Mr. Lawrence? No? Shall we call him? Kevin? Did you have your hand up?
I did.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Thanks, Madam Chair. I agree with this. You know, when I was going through the budget, there was a lot of money not spent, and hundreds of thousands of dollars, actually, and I was concerned with the accountability on this bill. You know, the money being put forward into 316 and the money that is there today. So I think the accountability is one that I'm really concerned with in this bill. We're putting money into a bill that already has hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if I could ask the officials, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, that's my concern. When I looked at what was in the bill and how much money was there, I was shocked that there was hundreds of thousands of dollars, and yet this government's going to put even more in there. And fiscally, I was just concerned on that. And Mr. McMurrin, if I can, I would like to get your perspective on this, because when I first looked at the bill, I was shocked at the hundreds of thousands that was not spent and that we're putting more money into this.
Mr. McMurrin?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I might just seek to clarify that the question is regarding like the money flowed to the Court Challenges program by the Department of Canadian Heritage. I don't believe the bill to be proposing anything related to an increase in the finances of the program, for example.
Yeah, I think my question is, there seemed to be a lot of money in that department, like in this bill, that has not been used. And so it could sit there for how long, who knows? So I just had some concerns over this. Not that I'm expecting 100,000 submissions. I'm not. But when I do see a substantial amount of money in this, in this pool, I'm a little concerned. That's my point on this. There seemed to be a lot of money there. And, hey, listen, I wish we had no cases on this, but I understand that there will be some cases, and the varying amounts of money needed to take part in something like this, I realize also is substantial.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the clarification. Yeah. So I guess I would just remind members, because I think it's related, it's underlying the question, that there was an announcement in Budget 2023 regarding the doubling of the program budget from $5 million annually to $10 million annually. So that is the case, and that is underway. The ramp up is underway. So the university is in the process of planning for the receipt of the new monies and how that will be used. The two independent expert panels are obviously involved in planning for how that's going to happen. There are some parameters around it. For example, a minimum of 30% of the total funds will be dedicated to official language rights cases. So some of the original parameters of the modernized program will continue. But to the point around the surpluses that appear in public accounting around the program, I think something important to point out is that it's sort of related to the complexities of the legal cases that the program funds. There are situations in which surpluses return to the program if the money is not required by litigants. So there's a financial complexity to the management of the program that the university works through on a continual basis, effectively, as those monies return.
Yeah, that's part of the accountability that I just kind of sought on this, and that's why I kind of agree with CPC 3. It would kind of keep it up board, and we could see the accountability, and that was the reason I asked the question. Thank you.
Thank you. So now shall we call the question on? Sorry, Ms. Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. No, I apologize. Actually, I will add my comments at a later time. Thank you.
So seeing no other comments, shall I call the question on the sub-amendment that Ms. Thomas just tabled? Perhaps we may need to call a vote, Chair? I mean, clerk, sorry. It's okay. It's interchangeable right now.
The vote is on the sub-amendment of Ms. Thomas. Mr. Noor Mohammed.
No.
Mr. Coutu.
No.
Ms. Gainey.
No.
Ms. Latanzio.
No.
Mr. Seri.
No.
Mr. Waugh. Yes. Ms. Thomas.
Yes.
Monsieur Gould. Oui. Mr. Lawrence.
Oui.
Monsieur Champoux. Oui. Ms. Ashton.
No.
Yeas pour 5, nays contre 6.
The sub-amendment does not carry. So we now move on to the original G1, tabled by Mr. Nur Mohammed. We are going to vote on this. Ms. Thomas, is your hand? A new hand? Okay.
Yes, it is. Thank you. I wish to move a sub-amendment.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So to G1 as amended, I would wish to move a sub-amendment that incorporates CPC 4 for reference for those that wish to look at that. I would offer that after the line, it reads, and whose purpose is to provide funding for test cases of national significance. So this is the sub-amended portion. After the line, test cases of national significance, I would insert the following. That relate to federal laws or regulations or Government of Canada programs.
Ending at programs.
Correct.
Okay.
If I may, I will add context to this change whenever it's appropriate, Chair.
I think you'll have the floor. Speak to your sub-amendment.
Perfect, thank you. The reason for this change is because, again, we heard from witnesses saying that this program is most appropriate used for federal cases. Unfortunately, it was created by Pierre Elliott Trudeau Sr. As a backdoor way, actually, to go after the province of Quebec and actually attack some provincial legislation that they were putting through. He didn't want to do it himself. He didn't want the federal government's handprints to be on the challenge. And so instead, he created this program in order to fund third parties that could take on the province of Quebec and therefore attack that province. Similarly, it has been used over the years in this way, which is inappropriate. And so this amendment that I'm offering, or sub-amendment that I'm offering, would prevent the court challenges program from being used to go after provinces, and instead would have to stay within federal jurisdiction, which of course is most appropriate, given that we are talking about a federally funded program and we are talking about the charter, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Any discussion on this sub-amendment? No hands are up, so shall we call the vote on it? Please, Chair. Please, Clerk. Sorry.
The vote is on the sub-amendment of Ms. Thomas.
Which is actually a part of CPC 4.
Mr. Nur Mohammed.
No.
Mr. Coteau.
I vote no.
Ms. Gainey.
No.
Madame Latanzio.
No.
Monsieur Seri.
No.
Mr. Waugh.
Yes.
Ms. Thomas.
Yes.
Monsieur Gould.
Oui.
Mr. Lawrence.
Oui.
Monsieur Champoux.
No.
Ms. Ashton.
No.
Yeas pour 4, nays contre 7.
The sub-amendment does not carry. So now, do you have any other sub-amendments, Ms. Thomas? Your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sure. So This is very interesting because I'm picking up on a pattern here that my colleagues across the way do not stand for transparency or accountability.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Program.
Madam Chair, point of order. Yes. Totally happy to entertain these amendments, but the idea that now our intention is being, sort of assumed or impugned, I think is unreasonable. We're having a great day. Everyone's doing well. No reason to get negative.
Let's just move on a bit. Right. Okay, I don't think there's a point for that somewhere. Okay. All right, go ahead. Now, so anybody to discuss this sub-amendment? Oh, sorry. Well, hand is not up, though. Are you still? Sorry. Okay, point of order, New Mohammed. Go ahead, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Just simply making an observation. If the member takes that as negative, that is his interpretation. The observation stands. In terms of the sub-amendment that I wish to move at this point then, again, takes from CPC 5 and looks to incorporate it into G1, again, as sub-amended by Mr. Saray. And I apologize, just give me one moment here to find where it would best fit. So this would be inserted at the end of Mr. Saray's sub-amendment. So it would read this final line here. It says, rights that are guaranteed by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And I would insert, and that do not involve potential conflicts between those rights, period.
Ms. Thomas? There's an and after the semicolon after rights. You want that out or you want that in?
There would be a period after rights.
All right, okay, thank you. Now, discussion on the sub-amendment as tabled by Ms. Thomas. Seeing no one wishing to discuss it? Yes, sorry, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Sure. So again, we heard from a number of witnesses who brought this up, that in fact, what ends up happening is this program is currently administered by a body through UOttawa. There's, of course, no transparency around how that body is put in place or how those members are selected. There's no transparency around how cases are selected. There's no transparency around how cases are funded or to what extent. So we're left in this dark area as members of the public. And of course, it's taxpayer dollars that are going towards this program. And yet they are not informed as to how that money is used. So it is an interesting situation. What ends up happening, no doubt, is that applications are put forward for cases where actually some of those applications can be in conflict with one another. And so the board then is put in this situation where they are picking winners and losers. Essentially, the board is actually making a decision which side of the case they believe is more worthwhile than the other, which is really interesting that we would allow for the system to function that way. And so in doing that, then again, without transparency, without accountability, nothing has to be tabled before the House. Funding doesn't have to be made known. It raises a lot of red flags around this program, which of course is what we heard from many witnesses. And so what this sub-amendment is doing is it's saying where there is a conflict between rights, those cases actually should not be selected. The board should not be put in this position where they get to pick winners and losers. And so the amendment then, or sub-amendment at this point, then states very clearly that those potential conflicts between rights, that should be avoided. Again, in order to make sure that everybody has a fair chance at having their case heard, and the board is not put in a position where they get to essentially decide which side of the argument or which right gets given preferential treatment over another. It's wrong for the board to do that. It's certainly not a good use of taxpayer money, and it's actually a slap in the face to justice.
Have you finished, Ms. Thomas? Because your hand is still up.
It's up because I was called upon to speak, and I'm done now, so I'm happy to lower.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Monsieur Mella, voudrait poser une question?
You wanted to ask a question?
I have a question from Ms. Thomas on where the amendment, the sub-amendment goes. My understanding, it goes right after freedoms, in the last line of the sub-amendment from Mr. Serre, Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and then add, but that do not involve potential conflicts between those rights, comma, or semicolon.
No, period. She said a period there.
Because the and that's in the sub-amendment from Mr. Serre is needed to make the link between A1 and B in the Act.
Sure. So, Mr. Miller, I would be fine with a semicolon so that can continue to read correctly. That's no problem.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller, I would offer one small correction. When I read my sub-amendment into the record, rather than using the word but, it would use the word and.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yep, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now, any discussion on this sub-amendment?
I just said,
Yes, Mr. Lawrence?
yeah, and I realize that Ms. Thomas's earlier sub-amendments have failed, but a lot of the witnesses commented specifically on the need for independence and transparency, and of course, Ms. Thomas talked a little bit about that, and that was the aim of those amendments. And if the witnesses feel uncomfortable commenting, I understand that, but I'm wondering if they share any concern or they see any additional opportunity for transparency and the separation and independence of this program.
To undertake that? No? No one is putting their hand up? Yes, Martin, is your hand up or you just... Okay, all right, thanks. Ms. Thomas's hand is up. Oh, did you want the officials to answer that? Okay, I thought you wanted someone in the committee or Ms. Thomas to answer. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Yes, I would be happy to offer a perspective from the department as stewards of the modernized program, and I would simply state that from our perspective, independence and transparency are important touchstones of the modernized program, and in the way that the program has been implemented, there's been very much an attempt to make public the criteria, for example, around the selection of the independent organization. This was done in 2017 through an open and transparent process. The criteria were published around that process. The results were published subsequently. And they're similar in process to the way that members of the two independent expert panels are appointed to those panels. It's also done through an open and transparent process. I would also observe that the criteria around the selection of cases for funding by the University of Ottawa is very public in the sense that it's all published on the website of the program, hosted by the university, in fairly extensive detail around the three categories of cases that can be funded, or the three kinds of projects that can be funded. So development of test cases, litigation of test cases, and legal interventions. There are criteria around each one of those categories for both streams of the program, which we consider to be highly appropriate given the mandate we had to implement a modernized program in the most open and transparent way.
Ms. Thomas, Sanders, have you finished? Okay.
My apologies.
Thank you, Chair. Sure. So I would just ask the officials this. The comment was with regard to the overall process in terms of the body that oversees the program, which is through the University of Ottawa. I would agree with him that there is some level of transparency. However, I would ask him to send to the committee those selection criteria. I don't know that they're as transparent as what he's making them out to be. And certainly when I've looked in the past, and I've looked several times over the last couple of months, they are not always available in both French and English. And there are still some significant gray areas. So I would ask those to be tabled with the committee just so that we could peruse them. And certainly would ask that he make sure that those are in fact up on the website consistently and not taken down for any period of time. However, the comment does skip over what this sub-amendment does, and that is this sub-amendment makes sure that that the cases that are selected are not in conflict with, or that rights are not in conflict with one another. So that's a little bit of a different issue than what was commented on with regards to the selection of the panel.
Thank you. Now, we go back to the sub-amendment. There's further debate on the sub-amendment. So I'm going to call the question. Sorry, Kevin?
Madam Chair, you mentioned, I'm going to just get a verification through the department. Published later by the University of Ottawa, when I've gone on, cases that happen in February may not be reported until late in the year, November or December. Is there a guideline when a case does go through and one way or another ends? Is there a dead stop date? Like when I went on to the website, I'm seeing stuff that maybe we had a conflict in January, February with one case, and it's not being reported until maybe November, if at all. And I think that's what Ms. Thomas was saying. When you go on the website, it's very slow. It's not very transparent. And that was the issue with my accountability on money, because the Court Challenges program, right now they have a cumulative surplus of over $3.5 million. So according to the recent main estimates, the CCP's annual funding is going to double, as they said, to over $10 million. And that's the transparency, I think, at least on this side. We're having really difficult times, because when a challenge has been accepted and has gone through the proper negotiations, we're not seeing it up on the website. And is there a protocol in place with the university to get to this? Like I said, I've seen some that maybe are February, and then all of a sudden they pop up in November, which is like 7-8 months later. That seemed a little long to me. Is there a process in place to get these verdicts up sooner?
Per the contribution agreement between the department and the university, there's an annual report. It appears most years in November. In that report, there's a lot of information around statistics around the applications received and cases funded. Some cases are highlighted in detail, like in a descriptive kind of way. But as Ms. Sampson, the executive director of the program, I think, explained in her testimony, they're still working toward integrating that case information into the annual report, like per the contribution agreement. As she explained, I recall, they're trying to strike a balance between transparency and what she described as litigation privilege, like working toward the inclusion of cases that have exhausted all avenues of appeal. So that's the body of cases that is very near, I gather, to being included in those annual reports. Like, over the life of the modernized program, they've been working to assemble this database, to work with the beneficiaries of their grants to get their consent and to understand, the status of the different cases and appeals. We understand them to be very close to the point of being able to integrate a lot more information in that regard, possibly before the next annual report. That's something we're working through with them in real time. But this is stipulated under the contribution agreement. It was always the intent for this final case information to be made public.
Thank you, Kevin. So I'm going to go back to, yes, Mr. Lawrence, and the sub-amendment.
Yeah, just actually two. One is to follow up. I would just, I think, in addition to what Mr. Waugh was saying, is that it's good to have the court case with the consent. And we can all sort of imagine scenarios, like whether it be sexual assault or other victims where you may not want to publish that, get that, that's clear. But cases where we don't have victim or sensitive victims or things like that, it would be nice to not even wait for the annual report. Obviously, 12 months is a long time. And some of these court cases could already have dragged on for years before then. And so if we could get it, I'm not saying real time, but in a sooner than once a year would be terrific. I'll just pass that on as a comment. The other thing is Ms. Thomas asked for certain documents. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear an acknowledgement that you would provide those documents. If you could just clearly provide an acknowledgement that you're going to do your best to provide those documents, that would be great.
Mr. McMurran?
Madam Chair, I can absolutely confirm we'll provide all the information requested. In the information we provided further to our first appearance, I mean, there are links provided to the various pages I described with those criteria, but we can find a format in which to provide it where it's fully laid out and printable, essentially.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to call a question on the sub-amendment as tabled by Ms. Thomas. Clerk?
Mr. Noor Mohammed.
No.
Mr. Coteau.
No.
Ms. Gainey.
No.
Ms. Latanzio.
No.
Mr. Seri. No. Mr. Waugh.
Yes.
Ms. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Gould. Oui. Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
Mr. Champoux. Ms. Ashton.
No.
Yeas pour 4-4, nays contre 7-7.
The sub-amendment does not carry. And now, are there any other sub-amendments coming up from the floor? So then we shall go to the original motion, G1, as amended. I'm going to, any discussion on G1 as amended? Seeing no hand going. Kevin, did you put your hand up or you were just removing your earpiece? Okay, thanks. So Ms. Thomas?
I would like a recorded vote.
Thank you. Clerk? We will go to a recorded vote.
The vote is on Amendment G1 as amended. Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Yes.
Mr. Coteau.
Yes.
Ms. Gainey.
Yes.
Ms. Latanzio. Oh, apologies. I didn't see or hear.
Ms. Latanzio, we were hearing you actually.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Seri.
Oui.
Mr. Waugh. No. Ms. Thomas.
No, this could have been much stronger.
Mr. Gould. No. Mr. Lawrence.
No.
Mr. Champoux. Ms. Ashton.
Yes.
Yeas pour 7-7, nays contre 4-4.
G1 carries. And now we're going to go to, you know that NDP 1 and CP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are not going to be discussed. So we're going to go now to BQ1. Yes, sorry. Oh, okay, sorry about that. There's so many sub-amendments, I don't know where I am on this page at the moment. Okay, so, shall clause 2 carry as amended? Yes, clause 2 carries as amended. Okay. On division? On division. Okay. Now, we go to BQ1, and you have BQ1 before you, and I'm going to rule, sorry? Somebody's hand is up? Sorry. Okay, before I rule then. So now, Martin, you want to speak to BQ1, but I'm going to rule it inadmissible.
Alors, Madame la Présidente, si vous êtes pour le déclarer.
If you're going to say that it is inadmissible, I would wait to hear your justification because I do not see why it would be inadmissible. I would like to ask Mr. Miller to explain why BQ1 is inadmissible.
I can, but he wanted you to explain it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Monsieur Champoux, l'amendement...
The amendment exempts the province of Quebec
Est-ce que vous me permettez d'argumenter là-dessus, monsieur?
If you would give me an opportunity to comment, Mr. Mela? No? Okay, go ahead. And so this amendment proposes to maintain the court challenges program, and the amendment proposes to exempt the province of Quebec as far as applying test cases to the laws of the province of Quebec. And so this amendment would go against the principles of the bill. Mr. Mela, I would like to explain, or rather, I would like to argue that there is already an exemption, and the criteria state that this doesn't apply to challenging provincial legislation, and because outside of Quebec there are no linguistic laws, and we have raised during our discussions with witnesses the fact that there should be asymmetry in implementing this legislation because Quebec has a language law. I believe that this does not go against the spirit of the program and the legislation with the challenges program, because there are policies and there's provincial legislation. And so I'm truly wondering why, or rather I would like to question your interpretation, because I believe that it is admissible and should be debated here in committee.
Mr. Miller? Sorry, did somebody have the hand up on the virtual? No. Mr. Good.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question to the legislative clerk. If PQ BQ1 is accepted, BQ2 and 3 can no longer be moved? No? Because it seems to impact the same lines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Il n'y a pas de conflit de ligne dans ce cas.
There is no line conflict here because we're adding after line 16, and so many things can be added after a line, and if all three amendments are adopted, then everything would be renumbered.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Good? Yeah? Good. So I have the option to rule, or Mr. Shampoo asked for a debate on the issue, and I want to get a sense from the committee as to what you wish to do about this. Do you want to debate it, or do you want me to rule it inadmissible?
Madame la Présidente, rappel au règlement. C'est pas...
Point of order. It's not up to the committee to decide whether or not you can say that a sub-amendment is admissible or not.
Move the thing along so everybody felt that they had their say. Okay, so then I will rule that BQ1 is not admissible on the grounds that it proposes to exempt the province of Quebec as far as applying test cases to the laws of the province of Quebec, since the provisions of the bill apply to all provinces of Canada, exempting any one province from application is contrary to the principle of the bill. And again, I will refer this to the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, page 770, that says, an amendment to a bill that was referred to committee after second reading is out of order if it is beyond the scope and principle of the bill.
Madame la Présidente, par...
Madam Chair, out of respect for Quebecers, I would like to challenge your decision.
We have a vote on the challenge to the chair.
The vote is on the question, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Yes.
Mr. Coteau.
Yes.
Ms. Gainey.
Oui.
Madame Latanzio.
Oui.
Monsieur Serré.
Oui.
Mr. Waugh. No. Ms. Thomas.
No.
Mr. Gourde. No. Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Shampoo. No. Ms. Ashton.
Yes.
Yeas pour 6, nays contre 5.
The chair's ruling stands. Thank you. And now we go to, we're going to go to BQ2. And once again, I am going to rule on the same. Somebody had their hand up? BQ2, Mr. Shampoo.
Madame la Présidente, est-ce que vous...
Madam Chair, were you about to state that this amendment is also inadmissible? Because I don't want us to start with the same question again.
Shall I make a ruling as to why?
Ben, vous n'avez pas encore expliqué.
You haven't explained your decision yet, Madam Chair.
This amendment proposes to subordinate the establishment and implementation of a program under paragraph 5A1 of the Act to the planning set out in Quebec's Charter of the French Language, which is against the principle of the bill, and I refer to Procedure and Practices of the House of Commons, 3rd edition, page 770, which says an amendment to a bill that was referred to committee after second reading is out of order if it is beyond the scope and principle of the bill. So therefore, I rule this amendment inadmissible. B2 does not get voted on because it's inadmissible. I'm going to go to BQ3, clause 3. No, BQ3. Go ahead.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. J'espère.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope that we'll be able to debate this one because I believe that this is a significant amendment and would have an impact on decisions and discussions on 316. And this amendment is based on principles that were recognized in the Official Languages Act, the modernized version of it. I would be pleased to read the amendment for you. And so, after line 27, the Act is amended by adding the following after Section 5. The test cases referred to in paragraph 5A1 respecting constitutional and quasi-constitutional official language rights shall be consistent with the following purposes of the Official Languages Act. A. Advance the equality of status and use of the English and French languages within Canadian society, taking into account the fact that French is in a minority situation in Canada and North America due to the predominant use of English, and that there is a diversity of provincial and territorial language regimes that contribute to the advancement, including Quebec's Charter of the French Language, which provides that French is the official language of Quebec. And B. Advance the existence of a majority French society in a Quebec where the future of French is assured. Madam Chair, I will let my colleagues comment on this amendment, and I'm eager to hear the discussion.
Mr. Good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comments will be similar. I was present during talks on the modernization of the Official Languages Act, and this is an essential part of C13 and was accepted at the Official Languages Committee. I believe that Mr. Serré should accept what he already accepted with the Official Languages Act.
Thank you, Mr. Good. Anyone wishes to speak to this? Seeing no one else wishing to speak to it, I shall... Yes, Martin?
Madame la Présidente, si personne.
Madam Chair, if nobody else would like to speak, before we move to a vote, I would like to offer one final comment. And as Mr. Gould stated a few seconds ago, if we as parliamentarians are committed to our discussions and our commitments with C13, and C13 was studied in length, and we worked with Francophone communities in Quebec and other official language minority communities. I believe that the Official Languages Act was adopted with similar wording, and so it wouldn't make sense to reject an amendment that is almost word for word the same as what was adopted with the Official Languages Act. I'll stop there.
Thank you.
The vote is on Amendment BQ3. Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Despite my great affection for my friend, Monsieur Champoux, I have to vote no.
Mr. Coteau.
No.
Ms. Gainey.
No.
Madame Latanzio.
No.
Monsieur Serré.
No.
Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Ms. Thomas.
Yes.
Monsieur Gould. Oui. Mr. Lawrence.
Vive la Quebec, oui.
Monsieur Champoux. Ms. Ashton.
No.
Alberta, amour,
five,
les Québec,
cinq.
les Québec et les...
Nays.
Les chefs. Je m'excuse.
To read the results of the vote, please. Go ahead.
Yes pour 5-5, nays contre 6-6.
Sorry, Martin. The It does not carry your amendment. Thank you. All right, so now we go to clause 3. Yes, Mr. Nur Mohammed.
Madam Chair, I'd like to propose to amend Clause 3
Yes.
as follows, replacing lines 19 to 21 on page 2 with the following. 511, that the independent organization responsible for administering the program referred to in Section 7.1 of this Act and paragraph 43(1)(c) of the Official Languages Act shall each year submit to, and then be replacing line 20 on page 2 with the following, OUS year.
Before we go to vote on this or discuss it, I need to let the committee know that if G2 is adopted, BQ4 cannot be moved due to a line conflict. All right, Mr. Nur Mohammed, you wish to speak to you think it speaks for itself?
I believe it speaks for itself, but others may wish to speak to it.
Now I'm going to open the question to debate on this amendment. Mr. Serret, is your hand up? Thank you.
Merci, Philippe.
Thank you, Philip. Inaudible for the interpreter. I would like, of course, the amendment here is quite simple. We just want to ensure that it's aligned with C13, modernizing the Official Languages Act, and it wasn't the case earlier. And this is an administrative amendment because we're looking at dates for the annual report. We heard that from witnesses. And so, Madam Chair, through the clerk, I would like to send to all committee members a sub-amendment that was sent to all members, and it would add a line. So when we look at the bill, we would be adding a line after previous year. So on line 28 on page 2, I'm going to wait for everyone to have received the email. As you have received the email, great. So at the end of the line, we would add, and any outreach and promotional activities that were conducted with groups affected by these cases. And so again, it's a similar wording as C13, and to use the dates, November, and the report. And this is quite a simple amendment, administrative amendment, and I hope that everyone will be able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, hands are up. Just a minute, I haven't even called for. We're going to discuss Mr. Serret's sub-amendment. And so I'm going to entertain discussion. Mr. Lawrence, Mr. Gould, Martin, Ms. Thomas, in that order. Thank you.
Like, I understand that we're all busy and that things change based on witness testimony and other issues, and politics is at all times fluid. But I am, I guess, a little frustrated, to be honest. You guys are the governing party. Your job is to create legislation. And we have an initial proposal that's then being amended by you, and then you table drop a sub-amendment to that amendment. Like, we need to get our stuff together here, gentlemen. If there are any other sub-amendments to amendments, if you could kindly provide them to us now, so that we're not reviewing them on the fly and we're delaying things. Like you guys should have more on the game than anyone else of getting this legislation through. I feel like I have to help you shepherd the legislation through. I'm in the opposition. That shouldn't be my job. Can we please, if you've got any other sub-amendments you want to table drop, just share it with us now. These things aren't controversial. I just want to have a chance to review it.
Mr. Nur Mohammed, did you have a response to that, Mr. Serret?
I would love to respond. I would thank Mr. Lawrence for his generosity of spirit. I count him among those who I believe to be very generous of spirit, and understanding that sometimes administrative things need to take place, and this is indeed very much that. I am sure, given the number of amendments we have gone through over the course of the last little while, surely one sub-amendment that is 5 lines long and administrative in nature shouldn't take up that much time of the committee. So let's continue to work in the spirit of what we've been trying to do and try and get this done.
Mr. Good, sorry, I'm trying to read the list here that the clerk made. Ms. Thomas, then Mr. Good, then Mr. Shampoo.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I just want to confirm that my hand is up to speak to the sub-amendment, and my hand was also up to speak to the amendment as well.
Well, we're speaking to the sub-amendment now.
Chair, I understand. I'm just wanting to confirm that my hand is up for both and that I should be on both speaking lists.
We get to the amendment, Madam. Your name is already there. But we're dealing with the sub-amendment.
I understand. Thank you for confirming. I'm just going to ask the officials just to shed light on the significance of this. So the sub-amendment and any outreach and promotional activities that were conducted with groups affected by these cases. What does this sub-amendment accomplish? And maybe we'll start there. What does it accomplish? Why is it significant?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. It would appear that the amendment would give the program, the modernized program, the opportunity in its annual reporting to speak to its outreach with affected communities. If you consult the contribution agreement, this aspect is part of the mandate of the modernized program to some extent, like with some limitations, but it's clearly something, and we know this from our interactions with the university, that they're conscious of, and that and I believe the expert panels as well are interested to do more of as the program continues to take root. So I believe the amendment would give, as I say, give the program the opportunity to say more about that in the annual report.
So my follow-up question then to that would be, groups affected by these cases, who would that include?
I would make an educated guess that could include, on the official language rights side of the program, official language minority communities in all regions of the country. On the human rights side of the program, Madam Chair, I think it would include a number of different equity-deserving communities who we know to take advantage of the program through the current annual reporting. And I would assume a variety of Indigenous partners would also be part of that outreach.
Ms. Thomas, did you get your answers? Do you wish to say anything else?
Thank you, Chair. So we're talking about, affected by these cases, so we're talking about those groups that would be affected by the cases that were accepted under the program?
I take it from the language that this could include those communities seeking funding through the program and affected by the outcomes of those cases, but potentially other communities perhaps who aren't accessing the program to the extent possible at the moment for whatever reason.
So sorry, so then isn't that rather wide in scope and gray in terms of who's being consulted here and being reported on?
I would agree, Madam Chair. It's a general kind of reference to the potential communities that could be the object of this outreach. I took it to be a fairly neutral reference, but I accept the point that it could refer to a variety of different communities that aren't specified here.
And so without it being specified, then it really would just be left up to the organization responsible for administering the program to determine which groups they want to be transparent about and which groups they actually just don't care to include in their report. Correct?
Madam Chair, I think I would just comment that if, based on the current annual reporting done by the program, they take a very inclusive approach to showcasing, like highlighting the kinds of cases which receive support from the program. I have no reason to believe that wouldn't continue, on the basis of this amendment. An inclusive approach would be taken.
So in your estimation, then, every group that is consulted would be included in the report?
Madam Chair, I think that would be a reasonable assumption.
And is that the way that things are currently done?
My comment, Madam Chair, would be that I think the university does an excellent job at the moment of highlighting a number of different aspects of what they do in the annual report, touching on a number of different affected communities.
Thank you. I wasn't asking for an assessment as to whether or not you think they're doing a good job. I don't know that that's actually appropriate for you to comment on. Rather, my question to you is this current practice, is every group consulted equally reported on?
At the moment, Madam Chair, the cases that are highlighted in the annual report are selective. There are a certain number under each stream of the program that are described in a little more detail currently, so they are selective by definition. Not every possible community is showcased, but a certain breadth is, I think, is definitely. The program makes an attempt to show a certain breadth of the range of communities that are benefiting from the program currently.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate that, because I think that is the honest answer. I think ultimately it is up to the administrative body to determine which groups they want to give more attention to and which groups they don't. But we wouldn't know that because there's very little transparency and a whole lot of secrecy around this program. So I appreciate you confirming that. Thank you. No further comment.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. And I now have Mr. Gould.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to wait. There seems to be an issue with the French version for activities. And so the French would need to be corrected before we can vote on the amendment. The interpreter would like to request that Mr. Gould sit closer to his microphone so that she can hear him better.
So would that be correctable, Mr. Sarah? Yes? Good? Okay. So corrected? All right. So now Mr. Good, and we have Mr. Shampoo, and then Ms. Ashton.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I find I'm a little perplexed after this amendment, and I've got a bunch of images in my mind. I would like to know what these outreach and promotional activities are. Is it a corn peeling festival, a hot dog festival? What are we talking about? What are these outreach and promotional activities? I'm making jokes here, but I do find it a little concerning. I know we laugh about it, but there are groups who benefit, or rather take advantage of this program to challenge Quebec legislation. And it is a useful program. It has saved Francophone institutions in Quebec. It's great, but the use in Quebec is slightly different. And I find it quite concerning that we're talking about outreach and promotional activities. I would like for Mr. Serré to explain what these activities are.
C'est déjà des activités qui...
Well, these are, or rather, we're using the language from C13. And if Mr. Shampoo wants additional information, I don't know if Mr. McMurrin has additional information, but it's certainly not corn on the cob activities. Let's try to keep this professional. I understand, Mr. Serré, that we're not talking about corn, but I do want to raise that this is a little bit concerning. It's interesting that you're using language from C13 and that it's justified to use C13 now, whereas we were using the language from C13 in the same manner with my amendment, which seemed justified, and yet things are different. I find it weird to talk about outreach and promotional activities. Making the program known, I'm not against that, but again, the wording is a little bit strange. I don't want to fall into a trap.
All right, and so now we have Miss Ashton, and then Miss Thomas, and then Mr. Lawrence. Nikki?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I want to indicate that I think this sub-amendment, which is a reflection as well of something we've put forward later on. I'm not sure if it's going to get canceled out as well, but our amendment comes from, which was witnesses like West Coast Leaf and others have made clear that it's important to engage in consultations with organizations and groups for whom the Court Challenges program is applicable. I think it's important to respect testimony brought forward by those witnesses. I'm a bit concerned that we're minimizing important testimony that we heard from witnesses that presented at our committee.
Thank you, Ms. Ashton. Ms. Thomas, and then Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just on the list. I've already spoken to this. I'm just wishing to speak to the amendment when we come back to it.
Still on the sub-amendment, I'm sorry. So, okay, good. Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Lawrence, I just wanted to clarify something. You commented that the government should get their act together. This is a private member's bill, not a government bill.
I'm completely aware of that, but that was my comment. That's why I didn't say that they were the government. I said they were from the governing party, and they have considerable resources that us opposition parties don't have, even when drafting a private member's bill, and access to civil service that we do not. And I just find it odd.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I want to bring some clarity to that point.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah, the member opposite.
Sorry, I don't know whose point of order do we have here, Mr. Cotto? Yes?
Yeah, the member opposite has the exact same resources as any other member of this House that's not part of the executive of government. So that's a bit misleading. We don't have access.
He can put himself on the list.
It's
not a point of order.
Like,
this is not a point of order.
Yeah, this is not a point of order.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
It's not a point of order, Mr. Cotto.
It's not a point of order, but it's
long. You can wait till I'm done, Michael.
You can't just say
it's not a point of order, Michael.
Not true.
Michael, it's not a point of order.
Not a point of order, Mr. Cotto. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair Lawrence.
Okay. Now, after Mr. Lawrence, anybody else here? So I'm going to ask. You haven't finished. I'm sorry.
No problem, Madam Chair. But the substance of my point was, if there are other sub-amendments, I would appreciate it if the government would give them to us now. They don't have to wait until the amendment is raised, unless the clerk tells me I'm incorrect, and then I'll stand down.
People speak to whatever is on the table at the moment, and right now, this amendment and sub-amendment applies to the clause we're dealing with. I'm sorry, Mr. Lawrence. Okay, so I'm going to ask a question. The question is, before you vote on this, I want you to know that if G2 is adopted,
Madame la Présidente, rappel au règlement.
Point of order. We're on a sub-amendment. We're still on the sub-amendment. Thank you for clarifying.
Non, mais je veux dire, on peut voter sur...
No, but perhaps we could vote on the sub-amendment and then talk to the amendment.
So, amended or not, I just wanted to let you know about that. So let's call the question on the sub-amendment of Mr. Seri.
Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Mr. Noor Mohammed, you're being called.
Yes.
Mr. Cotto.
Oui.
Ms. Gainey.
Oui.
Madame Latanzio.
Oui.
Monsieur Seri.
Oui.
Mr. Waugh. No. Ms. Thomas.
No.
Monsieur Gould.
No.
Mr. Lawrence.
No.
Monsieur Champoux.
Non.
Miss Ashton.
Yes.
Yeas pour 6-6, nays contre 5-5.
Sub-amendment of Mr. Surrey is carried, and now going to Mr. Nur Mohammed's amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Yes, Mr. Shampoo? Okay, sorry, I have Mr. Lawrence first, then Ms. Thomas, then Mr. Shampoo.
I'll give my time to Ms. Thomas.
And yes, we're just discussing it. I just want you to know, after we are discussing the amendment, that if G2 is carried, then BQ4, CPC 6, and NDP 2 cannot be moved due to a line conflict. So, just be informed.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just, sorry, a
Ms.
point
Thomas?
on that. Thank you. Sorry, I do need clarification. G2 deals with lines 19 to 21. CPC 6 deals with lines 26 to 28. So I just need to understand why that would not be movable if G2 passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. G2, indeed, as you pointed out, deals with line 19 to 21 on page 2. That's in paragraph A. But in paragraph B, it also deals with line 28, and that's where the conflict is.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
I go to Monsieur Shampoo. Martin?
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to propose a sub-amendment to G2. The sub-amendment is for in case G2 is adopted, and so BQ4 would not be able to be moved. So having to do with the annual report, we propose a sub-amendment by replacing previous calendar year if those cases have been made public. We shared this amendment to the clerk in both official languages, and so I will read the amendment quickly, including the sub-amendment, so it's the last line, including a list of the cases having received funding if those cases have been made public.
Discussion on the sub-amendment by Mr. Sorry, a question from Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Monsieur Champoux, on vient d'adopter le...
We've just adopted the sub-amendment to G2. For the second part of your amendment, you want to change the word for list. The other question that I have is that you would like to add if those cases have been made public, which you wish to add to the end of G2, but it has been amended. Would you like to keep it in the same place, or would you like it to be moved to the end of the sub-amendment so that it follows everything? To have as much transparency and accountability as possible, I would like to ask you, Mr. Mela, if the sub-amendment is added at the very end following the previous sub-amendment, or the amendment as amended, would that be improving transparency and accountability for the Court Challenges program? I am open to your suggestions.
Answer from Mr. McMahon. Go ahead, please.
Je peux juste peut-être confirmer que
I could perhaps confirm that according to the contribution agreement and what was said by Ms. Sampson is that things are shared after cases are closed, and so what is proposed here would be a change to the approach, and so a change to how things are done, or a significant change to, it would be a significant change to how the program is run currently.
En fait, je pense que c'est pas des...
I don't think it is unreasonable to ask for a list once cases are over and closed, and to respond to the concerns raised by certain witnesses regarding the program. I believe that it would respond to that request, having a list instead of an idea, because it would no longer be a simple choice made by administrators to choose cases that they seem are appropriate to share. I think it would be appropriate to ask for an exhaustive list. Would it be complicated to implement this? I would have to consult the contribution agreement, Madam Chair, but a list could be appropriate if it's a list of cases that were concluded during the year.
Merci.
Thank you. That's fine as an answer. Thank you.
Now, speaking to Mr. Shampoo's sub-amendment, Ms. Thomas. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Mr. Mella, before Ms. Thomas, Mr. Mella wants to ask a question of the mover, I think. Yes, Martin? Mr. Mella wishes to ask you a question to clarify.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Juste pour m'assurer que je l'ai au bon endroit.
I just want to be sure that I have it in the right place. And so, in the case where they were made public, you would like to add that after the previous year, correct? Perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to add, while I have the floor, that adopting the sub-amendment to G2 creates a line conflict with BQ5.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Thomas, you are speaking to the sub-amendment of Mr. Shampoo? Yes?
Yes, Chair, it's been a little bit tricky just to follow along, so I'm just hoping that you can, if there can be some clarification as to what exactly is happening here. I understand that Mr. Shampoo is incorporating BQ4. However, my understanding of the situation is that he is not bringing in his suggested A section within BQ4, but only B, which is to say that the cases made public would be reported on. I'm just wanting to confirm that I'm understanding that correctly.
Yes.
Yes,
correct.
That is correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so is your hand up or down? Have you finished, Ms. Thomas?
It's up to speak to the amendment, but not the sub-amendment anymore.
All right, thank you. And so anybody else there? No? No one else? Mr. Lawrence? Speaking to the sub-amendment of Mr. Shampoo.
Speaking to the sub-amendment, and I'm sorry I didn't catch on initially, so until Ms. Thomas clarified. So we would just be adding the previous calendar if those cases have been made public. Is that because we're just doing B instead of A? Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct?
Yes.
And why did we omit, if I could ask Mr. Shampoo, or, sorry, I just didn't follow it, and I apologize for that. Why did we not put in the A part of the amendment? Or?
Are you on BQ4?
Sorry? So you...
Are you on BQ4?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have it in French.
Not a problem.
Ms. Thomas, I just wanted to mention to you that Mr. Shampoo did not only move B, he added a little bit of A in there as well. The part that says quand aperçu.
I'm sorry, Chair, that's not being translated for me. I don't know exactly where that fits into the
Okay,
change.
that's line 25 on page 2, 5.1.
Could you read the change that is being made?
The change in English is, just a second, I'm trying to find it in English here. The change in English is,
An overview
yes,
for a list.
yeah. Where he says on, I'm going to, just a minute, where it says on line 27, an overview, and he added, and a list, overview and list.
Okay, thank
Madame
you.
la Présidente.
Thank you, okay.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Lawrence, are you good?
Thomas is good, I'm good.
Okay. Now, Mr. Shampoo, you have something to say?
Simplement préciser qu'à la...
I just wanted to confirm that both items in BQ4 be added. We want a list and not an overview. And I just wanted to specify, Madam Chair, it's important for us that we need to respect confidentiality while requiring a list. And this is important. I believe that BQ4 integrated into G2 is a good way of doing this.
So the whole of BQ4 you're integrating? Just trying to find BQ4. So you want to add as well as, instead you want to take away an overview and go lists, and you want the list for that confidentiality be respected?
Non, Madame, c'est exactement comme si...
No, it's as what was shared. I just wanted to explain after Mr. Lawrence's question. My sub-amendment is as is.
Thank you. All right. Now, having no one else discussing the sub-amendment, Ms. Thomas. Sorry?
Thank you, Chair. So sorry. So I do need to understand, I guess, from the officials here. So I understand the desire for a list. However, the second part of the sub-amendment says that it would be the cases that have been made public. If they've already been made, the cases have been made public from the officials. What is the significance of that as opposed to leaving that part out?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've been seeking to try to quickly understand that ourselves. I would say we were a little more focused on the language around the publication of names of cases, and whether that's all cases or as currently envisaged, or per the current practice of the program, cases that have exhausted all avenues of appeal. I wonder if that might be what's being alluded to. I'd welcome clarification myself on that, if that's what's being suggested, like when a case reaches the end of all avenues of appeal and is made public at that time.
Mata, could you answer that, please?
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair, I apologize. I missed the beginning of Mr. McMurran's question. Would he please repeat it? Of course. We do have a question for the cases that have been made public. Before an appeal? Madam Chair, I can respond. There are, or rather, this is already the case for cases that have been examined. And they are public, of course. And so it's the same principle. So instead of having an overview, we want to have a list. And we can only have a list of those that have already been made public. In 2020, I believe, there was a decision. 2000. And so, cases that have been completed, that are public, we would like them to be shared as a list.
Is that Mr. McMurray?
Oui, merci, Madame la Présidente.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Thomas, are you on this same sub-amendment, Mr. Lawrence? On the sub-amendment? Ms. Thomas is first, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, thank you. I do appreciate, I appreciate the official trying to seek some clarification on my behalf. I guess I'm still not seeing the significance here. If they're already public, we're just asking for that information that is public to be compiled into a list. Is that essentially it? We don't want to go looking for the information, so we want it put into a list for us. It's essentially asking for curation. I'm seeking clarification from the officials and I guess perhaps from Mr. Shampoo.
Shampoo has the clarification because it's his sub-amendment. Mr. Shampoo, and then the officials will comment if they feel that they need to.
Je l'espère d'ailleurs, parce que leur...
I hope so, because their point of view is essential, Madam Chair. We have a choice. In the annual report, which needs to be shared by the organization responsible for the program, there is information that we ask for. If Ms. Thomas says this information is already public, yes, but if somebody would like to do a more exhaustive research, this would be a lot more complicated than if this information could be easily found in the annual report of the organization. And so it's just a matter of transparency and facilitating access to the information. And that's why an exhaustive list would avoid having to do extensive research if we need to have access to that information quickly.
Mr. McMurray, you don't have a comment to make on that? It's clear?
Je pourrais juste commenter, Madame.
I could perhaps comment that the aspect of making it public, or rather, we need confirmation that the case is closed. This is perhaps a distinction between the amendment and the current practices.
Yes, Martin? And then, Mark, did you have your hand up? All right.
Puis peut-être que vous pourrez m'éclairer là.
Perhaps you can clarify a case that is before the court. Is that not public? And once they're over and once a decision is made and the case is closed, if we can say it that way, are these cases not public? We don't want to change the rules that a case that is ongoing be made public because of confidentiality. But once the case is completed, I don't see why you would need any kind of agreement or consent when one uses a court challenges program that is paid for by taxpayers. Well, the information should be public, correct? Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that the public nature of the case is not necessarily factored in to the program in cases that have been completed. Okay, just to clarify, if an organization decides to challenge legislation or to challenge a policy and goes to the court with public funds for their challenge as the program is to be used. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not up to that organization to decide whether or not they can remain anonymous or that they accept that their information is shared. This information should be public. They're challenging legislation or a policy. In some cases, government legislation or policy. And so I just want to be sure that the wording that we use is clear. That we're not trying to have access to sensitive information. We want access to information once a case is closed. Is there any reason why anonymity would be maintained for these groups who use the program to challenge a policy? I'm trying to understand in what case that information wouldn't be publicly accessible. Thank you. It's true, Madam Chair, that generally these cases are quite well known. But again, I just wanted to state that this is not a criteria within the program to decide the public nature of a case. Okay, so I just want to be very clear, because perhaps I'm being a bit slow, but I don't understand. The cases are public. The funds are public. The program is a federal program. And again, Mr. McMurrin, I just want to be crystal clear. And if it's not clear, please let me know. We're not asking to change the nature of the information that needs to be shared by the program administrator. We just want, instead of an overview, where there's some cherry picking of which cases were funded through the program, we want a complete list. So the same criteria would apply. So instead of having 5 or 10 examples of cases, we would have the list of all cases. So the criteria don't change with what's being disclosed. It's just that instead of having an overview, we want a list. And this list should be publicly accessible without having to go through an ATIP request. I just want to be sure that I understand, and I want everyone to understand the spirit of this sub-amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to state that the program seeks to strike a balance between transparency and litigation privilege. It's the latter that we want to be sure that we want to respect. And that is why the criteria pertains to whether or not the case is closed, and not necessarily the media interest or the public nature of the case. And so, following that logic, then there would be no issue in receiving the complete list, while respecting the criteria that are already in place and respecting confidentiality. Because this seems to be a matter of transparency. And it's a criteria of transparency that would be easy to implement. We're not changing the criteria We're simply applying it to all cases that can be disclosed. Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I think that the notion of a list, if we're talking about cases that are closed, seems fine.
Now, Mr. Saray.
Alors, je dis, Madame la Présidente, qu'on est contre B.
Madam Chair, I just want to say that we're against BQ4 as the sub-amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
Jared, I just want to follow up on Mr. Shampoo's questions, and you certainly aren't slow, or if you are, I'm much slower than you are. So I really do appreciate those questions. So I just want to dig into the fact of litigation privilege. I think there's some value in this. I'm not trying to undermine that term in total, but I do want to unpack it a little bit. Like I guess I could imagine a situation where you had an individual who was a sexual assault victim, and they wanted to change legislation, and we wouldn't want to discourage those folks by publicizing their name or otherwise. And I get that 110%, but I would think that in most cases, we would want published anytime that the taxpayers are funding litigation, what they are paying for, the performance that they are getting for those dollars, just like any other program, and the result of those programs. So forgive me for this little bit of ignorance, but as of today, before this bill, what do taxpayers get to know where their dollars are going with respect to any of the cases right now? Is that, or no?
At the moment, like what's envisioned under the contribution agreement is full transparency at the end of the legal process, when the cases are closed and all avenues of appeal have been exhausted or relinquished.
Okay, so the case is done, whether it's successful or unsuccessful, the challenge to the legislation, and then you will publish that. Mr. Shampoo is asking, I believe, for a complete list of that, and but there was some objection to that, and that's part of it I didn't quite understand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wanting to clarify that the current approach envisioned under the modernized program is in a given year, like in a given annual report, to publish a list of the cases that have been financed that were closed in that time period. Anything beyond that would be a departure from the current practice.
Sorry, can you say again? My apologies, Mr. McGrath.
That what's envisioned at the moment is that the annual report publish the names of the cases in the preceding
year. But only
year
after
that
they're
closed.
So my curiosity is getting the best of me. So these cases would be, in the legal process, most challenges, most court cases are public. And so these cases already exist. The only thing that, why would we not publish the fact that the taxpayers are funding this before the decision is rendered?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, the balance, and it was alluded to, is between full transparency and litigation privilege.
What is the litigation privilege? I don't understand. I went to law school. I don't understand that term.
As I understand it, like it can have a number of aspects to it. Some were just alluded to, like around the security and personal safety of the people involved in the case.
Sure, and that's granted. That's 100% the way it should be. But if there isn't a security of person, if it isn't a vulnerable individual, that we are, for whatever reason, bringing a case and that person's fine with the information, even they want their name out there and they want to know that they're associated with this program. Right now, you aren't publishing that till the end of the decision. Is that correct?
That's correct, at the end of the legal process.
And in the annual report, in the modernization version as it is, are you publishing currently how much you are funding these various cases? At just obviously you said it's just at the end, but do you put in what the total dollar amount was?
The program absolutely publishes financial information in the annual report.
Yeah, but that's not the question I asked. So is do you put the case? So let's say it's Mr. Smith or Mr. Shampoo challenges the legislation in Quebec because he's like that. It's a little joke. And when your organization gave him and his organization $200,000, is that easily accessible in the report?
In the current annual report, no, like it's not at that level of detail. That there's more detail that's being worked toward. I'd need to confirm whether what's envisioned under the contribution agreement would get down to that level of granularity. We'd be able to get back to the committee on that. I'm not sure offhand that it would get down to a case level, but we could confirm that.
Okay, and I'm not trying to be difficult there. I'm legitimately trying to understand this and hopefully make the program better working with you on this. But I think it would be a good thing for transparency for Canadians to know how much they're funding the various cases, provided, and I think there are legitimate reasons why to withhold if you've got a vulnerable person. I get that 110%, but for those folks who are not in a vulnerable position, I think that that's a great idea and a reasonable thing to do. But just to get back, and then I'll finish up with Mr. Shampoo's sub-amendment. It is just to provide a list of those cases at the end of the year, which is already sort of part of the modernization, but this probably just puts a belt and suspenders approach to it. Is that right? Because all these cases are public anyways. Or the vast majority, unless you like I said, it's a sexual assault victim or something like that, right? So.
I would say, Madam Chair, that the amendment is confirming to some extent the existing practice of the program if it's clear that it's referring to closed cases in the previous year.
Thank you very much, and I didn't mean to give you a hard time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I think we have Mr. Gourd now.
The contribution agreement between an organization and the program. The disclosure, is it mandatory? If it's mandatory, can one ask that it remain confidential? In the contribution agreement between departments and the University of Ottawa? No. Between the university and the applicant or the organization receiving funds through the program to go to court. In the contribution agreement, is there anything that forces public disclosure? Or do I have to click that it's okay for it to be made public? Or can they click that it not be made public and have to explain why? Because that would remove transparency. Thank you. I understand your question. In the contribution agreement between departments and the University of Ottawa, it is mandatory. It is clear that at the end, once the case is closed, it will be made public. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm now seeing no other hands, I'm going to go to the vote on Mr. Shampoo's sub-amendment. Clerk?
Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Malheureusement, non.
Unfortunately, no.
Mr. Coutu.
No.
Ms. Gainey?
No.
Ms. Latanzio?
No.
Monsieur Seri?
No.
Mr. Wall?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Monsieur Gourde? Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Monsieur Shampoo? Ms. Ashton?
No.
Yeas pour 5-5, nays contre 6-6.
Now go to the amended G2. Thank you. Shall we discuss that? Any discussion on amended B2, or shall I call the vote? We have a hard stop at 5:40. So, Ms. Thomas, are you speaking to the amended motion?
I believe if you confer with the clerk, I'm on the speaking list.
Yes, I know. But are you speaking to that currently? Yes? Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would wish to move a sub-amendment. So for the sub-amendment, I would be looking to incorporate what is currently in CPC 6 for the reference of committee members. And so I'd be looking to Mr. Miller to confirm, but based on my understanding of the amendment G2, and then of course sub-amended by Mr. Saray, based on my understanding of how that's working, I should be able to insert into, replace lines 26 to 28 by putting in the following. And financial performance of the program, as well as a list of all the cases that received funding and the amount provided for each case. And then after that, it would pick up with Mr. Saray's sub-amendment. And Chair, once everyone feels like they understand the sub-amendment that I've put forward, I'm happy to speak to its significance.
Yes, go ahead and speak to it, please.
Perfect, thank you, Chair. Sure, so I think similar, it is somewhat similar to Mr. Champous's previous motion, looking to create greater accountability, greater transparency around the spending of taxpayer dollars. Wanting to make sure that the financial performance, of course, is, yes, made known, but also it's the idea that there would be a list rather than just a summary of the cases. To Mr. Champous's point, of course, this would help bring greater clarity, greater transparency. It would put things into a document that could be easily found and read. And then, of course, the amount provided for each case. This was a recommendation that came forward from a number of witnesses who said that the Core Challenges program should provide a more detailed account of the cases that it funds and the funds that are given to each of those cases. Again, this isn't known right now. There's a lot of secrecy around this. It's allowed to be in the dark. And so I believe that there's an opportunity for the committee then to ensure that, as the Prime Minister says, he likes to claim, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So let's let the sun shine in and allow for there to be some transparency around the way that dollars are allocated and to whom.
It being time 5:40. I will suspend this meeting. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sorry, Ms. Thomas, because we have no more resources and time.
Madam Chair, I understand that, but I would raise a point of order. If you suspend this meeting, it hijacks our agenda next week.
That's what I was going to say.
And so I would ask you to adjourn.
That's what I was going to say.
Well, are you making a motion to adjourn, Ms. Thomas?
I'm moving a motion to adjourn.
Ms. Thomas is moving a motion to adjourn. I will call the question, no debate, obviously. It's a majority seek to adjourn. Yes, Mr. Newman.
I have a question. So the problem, so I don't disagree with what Ms. Thomas is saying at all. The problem is you've now already adjourned the meeting, or suspended the meeting, excuse me. So I don't know how this quite works mechanically. We do have Safe Sport up at the next meeting. So the question is, we've got a timeline on this. We've got Safe Sport theoretically next meeting. So This is a real conundrum we've got ourselves into.
The meeting does not mean that it ends. We always suspend meetings for people to talk, so obviously we can go to the motion to adjourn.
Keep it suspended, fine. Just keep it suspended. Okay, fine, keep it suspended, fine, fine.
So,
never mind.
motion to adjourn, I need a majority.
No.
Everyone's, yes, but that's you, Mr. Nur Mohammed. I need to hear from the other members of the committee if they wish to adjourn or suspend. I'm not hearing from anybody.
Let's call.
The motion is to.
Let's call. She can unsuspend.
The
She has that
motion
right.
is to adjourn. Can I have a question on this, please?
Yeah, let's do the vote, and then if they don't win it, then we can suspend. That's fair, guys? So you guys.
No, let's just ask people to vote on adjourn.
Exactly.
The motion to adjourn is on the floor. No debate.
We want to adjourn.
Let us please just do the vote. Anybody opposed to adjourning the meeting? Mr. Nur Mohammed, no debate. There's no debate. You're just opposed.
Opposed to adjournment.
So I'm going to call the question.
The motion is to adjourn the meeting. Mr. Nur Mohammed.
Yes, vote to adjourn. Sorry, excuse me. No, sorry, no. See, sorry, I had not turned the mic off. No, not voting to adjourn. No.
You're voting no, Mr. Nur Mohammed. Go ahead, clerk.
Mr. Coteau.
You remember that? I did that for you.
Mr. Coteau, are you there?
No.
All right. You're not there, or you're voting no? Okay. All right.
Oh, can you?
Ms.
Okay.
Gainey.
Sorry. Did you get that, Chair?
We got it. Yes. I'm just
Okay, thank you.
pulling your leg. Yeah.
Ms. Gainey.
Opposed.
Madame Latanzio.
No.
Monsieur Seri.
No.
Mr. Waugh.
Yes.
Ms. Thomas.
Yes.
Monsieur Gourde.
Wait.
Mr. Lawrence.
Wait.
Monsieur Champoux. Ms. Ashton.
No.
Yeas pour 4-4, nays contre 7-7.
The motion to adjourn has been defeated, and we will suspend till the next meeting. Thank you.